Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Franchise Show. This is the show where we get under the hat of some of the most important topics in franchising. And it's a live show. Well, it's live if it's the 28th of January at 5:15 for about 45 minutes. And if you are here live, we always like to hear from you. Looking forward to hearing what you've got to say on the topic today. And the topic that we have today is franchise mentorship. So it's a great topic. We have some wonderful guests, which I will introduce to you in a moment. But this show is live, and it's what makes it special because it's a conversation with a community, and we're all having these conversations. You are the producers and the directors of this show. So we always love your comments. So please, if you are here, say hello as we go along today. So I'd like to, first of all, introduce a regular co-star of the show, Penny Hopkinson, who of course you know, and the lovely Steve Ennis, which welcome both of you to the Franchise Show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey.
You're very welcome. I'd like to start off, if we can, with a little introduction. Most people know Penny, but Penny, could you give yourself a little introduction, and then we'll let Steve go as well.
Well, I'm an operations manual specialist, but instead of the dull, text-heavy operations manual that we know and hate, I reimagine I reimagine the operations manual as a knowledge-sharing environment which is dynamic, engaging, and it's where everyone can learn and grow and participate.
Fantastic. Thank you for that introduction, Penny. And I need to show your book as well. Now, is it going to be the right way around? I genuinely don't know this time, so we're going to find out. Yes, it is.
Brilliant.
A lovely book. So you must get that, engage with what Penny does, because it's a fantastic service. Read that book and contact Penny on that. So Steve, great to have you with us. Perhaps you could give us a little introduction to what you do in mentorship and how you've been involved in our lovely franchise industry.
Yeah, thanks, Harvey. I turned around a moment ago because I have the same book on the shelf, but it just didn't appear for me. So I can heartily recommend it to any of the audience this evening. It's a fabulous piece of work that Penny's put together. So I thank you for the introduction. It's Penny whom I can thank or blame for this, because Penny and I have worked together for a good 14 years, perhaps, something of that nature. So I've had a long time in franchising. I was 16 years with Wiltshire Farm Foods, a national organisation comprising of about 90 franchise outlets, and I worked in business development with them for a good 16 years. And during that time, Penny wrote and rewrote our operations manual on a couple of occasions, which is where we got to know one another. A couple of years ago, I left Wiltshire Farm Foods to join another franchise organisation, this time Business Doctors, who are a business advisory service. And funnily enough, I find myself working with Penny again because a number of my clients need support with their operating practices. So lo and behold, I phoned Penny up, and so there's a number of projects that are ongoing at the moment where we're working with people who are looking to enter franchising and are looking for an operations manual to support them. Now, on tonight's subject of mentoring, I'm mentored myself, so I'm a mentee within Business Doctors. I have a more experienced colleague within the organisation who's supporting me on my journey as I'm 2 years into the business, so that's great. And then on the other side of the fence, I do mentoring in a kind of a wide variety of roles. I work in Worcestershire. So I do mentoring for Worcester County Council, who offer a service for small business owners to get that support service. I work at Worcester University, and I don't teach students at Worcester University. I teach business owners. So one of the courses is the Exec MBA, that they run at the university. I teach on that course, but I'm the only non-academic who's teaching on it. So I do mentoring for the business owners, because my business experience is perhaps more relatable for the business owners. And I also mentor on another government-funded course called Help to Grow, which is a short course of 13 weeks that's government-sponsored, that I think operates through about 40 different universities in the country. And through Help to Grow, there's a mentoring scheme in there as well for the participants on the course. So I get involved in that. And then I also have business owners from the sort of networking community I work within who engage me for mentoring support there as well. So kind of a lot of mentoring going on.
That is a lot of mentoring. And I've never heard the word mentee as well, so that's good. I like that word. I'll use that one.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Before we get into today's chat, let's have a look, because we've got a few people who have joined us here live early on today. Let's say hello to the wonderful Natalia. Natalia is our resident franchise legal beagle, and she keeps me on the straight and narrow when I sort of wander off. She makes sure that these conversations reflect our industry incredibly well. So it's always good to have Natalia with us. She's put happy Tuesday, Harvey, Penny, and Steve. Great to have you with us. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on mentorship and how mentors have helped you and how you think they should be involved in our wonderful industry. We have a LinkedIn user here. Hi from the Netherlands. I think this is Lois, and forgive me if that's not how you pronounce the name, but let us know who you are, and also let us know if you've had an experience of mentorship in your industry, how it's worked, what was good, what was bad about it, because that's what we're going to get into today. We have the ever wise Simon Wise. He's very wise. And he's put hello, franchise friends. Well, it's always great to have you with us, Simon. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on mentorship. Simon is from FranRec, of course, partner of our sister show, Franchising Brand Stories, big advocate of our industry, many years of experience. So really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. We have Deborah Salisbury. Great to have you with us, Deborah, from The Reading Doctor. And Deborah's put hello, Harvey. Well, great to have you with us. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on mentorship. Please pop a question or a comment or your thoughts as we go on. And we have Neil Newman. Oh, well, look at that, Neil. Your QR code is on the screen as we talk. It's almost like a plan, these things, isn't it? Neil is from the lovely Gather, and Neil is somebody who can put a survey to your business and find out how you're doing. And he does that for us as well. So I'm going to put up a QR code on the left soon that you can give us your thoughts on the franchise show. So Neil's put, hi all, looking forward to seeing how mentoring is being undertaken in the franchise industry. Absolutely. Well, look, oh, and we've got one more person. Let's introduce them. It's the wonderful Paul Murphy. Paul is a hat expert, and you will find out more when we get to the latter part of today's show. And Paul has put good evening all. Good evening to you, Paul. Great to have you with us. Right, let's get into this. We've got a question here from Simon, so let's see what it is. So Simon has put, I've never had a mentor, wish I had. I've just learned from other people's mistakes or bad bosses. What do you make of this one about never having a mentor? You know, is mentorship right for everybody, Steve, or is it, you know, is it only a fit for certain people in certain industries?
No, it's something that would be suitable for anybody, as long as the person involved in thinking of getting support is open to genuinely receiving support. So you can only help somebody who wishes to receive it. So if you're blessed with the right attitude, where you're open to being supported when you need it or challenged when you need it. If the challenge is done in the right spirit, then anybody can enjoy mentoring.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right about that attitude and that spirit, and and that's where these things come together and work really well. Let's have a look. We've got another question here from Simon, and we will come on to you, Penny. I assure you, in a moment. You're waiting very patiently, but I do think this is an interesting one for Steve. Steve's put here: is there a fine line between a mentor and a franchise consultant if you were a franchisor? I know, Steve, you very kindly shared with me a document that sort of sets out kind of how mentorship works. Perhaps you could just like to get into sort of the bare bones of kind of the framework of which way you can go with mentorship.
Yeah, so thanks, Simon, for the question. I think what's really interesting there is we're probably all familiar with the role that a franchise consultant might bring. And you know, I don't want to put words in Simon's mouth, but as a franchise consultant may typically provide guidance, provide expertise, and help a franchisee solve a problem. And so the important distinction with mentoring is that this is something I do with all the people I work with, is in the very first introduction, I put my hand up and say, I might possibly have no idea how to help you. And I have absolute permission to take that role, because the problem, that the challenge, or the thought that the mentee might bring to me may be something I've got no idea as to the answer. So it admonishes you of the burden of responsibility of having to have the answers to a given problem. So I think there's quite a clear distinction, because a franchise consultant, by the nature of it, is in that role to try to provide direction, provide answers, provide stimulus, whereas a mentoring role can be one of a variety of things. So you said there was the document I shared with you earlier. That's something the Association of Business Mentors use as a tool, and it encourages people entering mentoring to think of it in 4 dimensions. The mentor could be a facilitator. The mentor could be a counselor. They could be a coach, or they could be somebody who supports with networking in terms of directing somebody towards somebody else who might be able to support the mentee. So as you're wearing a hat, Harvey, there are probably, in the role of mentoring, at least 4 different hats you might wear in any given situation. Some of it is just to listen. Some of it is to direct. Some of it is to provide intellectual or knowledge guidance. And sometimes it's just to be a friendly ear who may listen and offer nothing more than just an ear in a safe place where somebody could share their thoughts.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much for that, Steve. It's great to sort of understand the framework of what mentorship really is. Penny, let's allow you a little bit of time to talk here. You're sitting there very patiently. I mean, first of all, I was going to ask you if you'd had any experience of either mentoring people or being mentored yourself, and also how mentorship, knowledge sharing, and an ops manual, how those things sort of fit together, particularly in a franchise model.
Well, I think one of my hats is as facilitator, because my franchisors have all the knowledge, and I facilitate that knowledge and help them create a knowledge sharing environment, an operations manual, whichever they prefer to have. And I think you need to, when you're doing something new, like proposing a knowledge sharing environment as opposed to the traditional operations manual, you need to coach a knowledge sharing mindset. So instead of the franchisor producing all the information as they see it. We're now looking at the franchisee and how their teams perceive the tasks and create the procedures visually. So it's a complete turnaround. So you're doing peer-to-peer engagement, and it is no longer totally top-down.
Absolutely. It takes me back, what you've just said there, it takes me back to something that Simon said in his last comment, actually, because Penny, you often talk about knowledge sharing, and Simon's put about learning from other people's mistakes, and that knowledge sharing is all about that. You know, somebody does it one way, whether that's a franchisee, an employee of a franchisor, or anyone within the network. If they find a better way of doing something and they can share that, then it's going to improve that knowledge base and that operations manual. You know, and you know, that's part of mentorship, isn't it? You know, you're sharing these things and, you know, and helping support somebody.
Absolutely. And I'm interested in Simon's comment that he's never had a mentor. Neither have I. But in our different ways, we've learned by osmosis. Yes, I've learned from other people's mistakes, and I've certainly had a couple of bad bosses in those heady days when I was employed. And I haven't been employed since 1976, which is a heck of a long time. I think I'd be a very, very bad employee. There is a trend today for people to have mentors, and I've noticed some of my colleagues in a couple of the groups, they have mentors, and you're never too old. So perhaps one of these days I shall find myself a mentor and see where that takes me, see if it improves what I do and the service I provide.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, at any point, it's good to take a balanced view, take other people's experiences and use those for the greater good of yourself or others around you. So I think
there's a couple of things to add to that as well, I think, Harvey. If I go back to one of Simon's questions in the chat, he asked the difference between mentor or franchise consultant if you are a franchisor. Well, when I was a franchisor, what we used to do was engage franchisees to be the mentor for fellow franchisees. It created a safer space, and it was completely detached from the franchisor. So we'd set an experienced franchisee up with a new franchisee, and we gave our word that it was entirely confidential, any conversations they had between themselves. You know, so the new franchisee had a safe space in which to share their concerns, and then if we needed to know something that might help their situation, the more experienced franchisee who was acting in the role of the mentor, he could feed that back to us in the spirit of helping us improve something that might serve all of the network. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I love being a mentor because I get to learn from the people I work with. So, for example, this week, I'm currently mentoring somebody who won Dragon's Den. And the guy's phenomenally successful. And so there's nothing I can teach him about what he does. He's an expert in his field, but he wants a sort of broader level of support. And the gift I get from doing mentoring for others is that almost every single occasion, I'm getting to learn things from wrestling with the problems that they share with me, which helps me improve myself, because I'm constantly learning from the different angles of understanding that they bring to the conversation. So the other thing to really appreciate about mentoring is it's not directional. It can be absolutely both ways, where mentor and mentee can benefit from the relationship.
I love that. And I think you're absolutely 100% right there. You know, it can go both ways. You know, when you think of a mentor, you think of some sort of all-wise person that can lead you down a path, but you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, this show, this community, it's all about that. We're all mentoring each other.
Yeah.
You know, I sit down. One of the reasons I don't write anything down at the beginning is because I write a lot down while we're talking, questions that come in, the discussions we have, because our community are mentoring me.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you know, we're doing the same, but it's this rounded conversation.
And again, my preferred style, it's my personal style. Others, everybody brings their own style to it, but my preferred style is not to give direction if I can possibly avoid it. That's the absolute last resort. But if I can bring value to the discussions, it's by asking a suitable question that allows the mentee to unpick and unravel the problem themselves. Because if they can arrive at the understanding for themselves through the quality of question that you ask them, they're more likely to own the discipline that they're wrestling with. Whereas if I think that I know an answer and just provide it, but then the ownership for that solution possibly sits with me, and it sits with the mentee. So if you can bring value to the environment, it's to facilitate the mentee to find the answer to the problem they're wrestling with.
Definitely. It reminds me of that expression. It's a fishing one, so Simon Wise will like this one. But I think, isn't it, give a person a fish and they have a fish, but teach someone to fish and they have probably more than one fish. Depends how good you are at fishing.
Yeah.
But I think that's the, you know, the wonderful point you're making. I mean, you touched upon some really interesting points when you were talking there about franchisees supporting and being the mentors of, you know, potential new people coming into the network. I think that's a really important thing to do, you know, and for that to be, you know, a free thing that goes back and forth, because it's that safe space, like you said, you know, and then that can be reported back to the greater good of a wider network. Yeah, really like that. And do you know what? I was going to go back to one of those 4 things that you said at the beginning, which is the counselor as well, because I found that a really interesting, you know, word to use for one of the sort of the pillars of mentoring. And to me, counseling or being a counselor is often when something's gone wrong, you know, trying to sort of talk through that and work out a way to make that right, to make that better. Would you say that what's that counseling part of mentorship?
Yeah. Well, there's been quite a discovery on my part in the last couple of years when I've been working with business doctors, that things that have surprised me for the small business owner or the franchisee wrestling with the task of growing their business. 2 prevailing characteristics appear time and again. 1, imposter syndrome, and 2, a lack of confidence in their own ability. And sometimes what a mentee really just requires is for somebody just to tell them how blooming good they are at what they do, because they might be having people tell them, this is wrong, that's wrong, this is wrong, that's wrong. And nobody's there telling them, well, hang on a sec, yeah, there are some problems to solve, but there's so much that you're doing that is brilliant. Can we draw attention to that and reignite the flame of confidence that might have been dampened by the constancy of trying to meet with the challenges of the business? So confidence is a really important ingredient in the success of a business, and a good counsel can really protect the confidence of the individual and sometimes restore it. So there've been a number of people I've worked with on mentoring where I didn't need to show them anything about their business that they weren't already capable of doing, but what they'd lost is a bit of confidence in their mojo, and through the counselling, it reignited the fire and got them more positive about themselves, so they felt more confident about the decisions they were making. So that's one aspect. And then the other one is the constancy of comparison of looking at others and thinking they're doing it better, which creates the beast, which is imposter syndrome. And again, to quell that noise and allow the individual business owner can appreciate that the looking at others is such a negative thing to do, because it can only diminish the individual, and it really serves no good. And unfortunately, social media is one of the key providers for that anxiety. And so if I've got somebody who's suffering imposter syndrome, I try and ban them from social media for a fortnight or two, and just get them to stop comparing themselves with the Joneses, and focus on the many qualities that they bring to their business.
Absolutely. No, some really important points. What do you make of those, Penny? I think it's really important. I mean, telling somebody how good they are, that's powerful stuff, isn't it?
It is. It's always a psychological trigger. You keep telling people that they're bad at something, they will always fail. If you tell them that they're good at doing something, oh, I hadn't realized that. Oh, I can keep on doing it. And what I find when I go into a company and help them with their operations manual is everybody writes reports because they have to in the franchisor's business. When it comes to writing standard operating procedures or some part of the manual, they immediately, unless they really enjoy writing, immediately they start getting worried. And even so some of the multinationals, the iconic franchises that I've worked with, some of the heads of department who are charged with responsibility actually cannot do what they're asked to do, even with a framework. And so what happens is that the deadlines extend. You suddenly realize that they're floundering, and it's really important to go in and have one-to-ones with them and say, look, I couldn't do your business. I don't care about your grammar. I don't care how you write. I'm the person who edits as a professional editor. I can do my job, but I can't do yours. And so we work together to destroy the imposter syndrome. And a little secret, of course, when you're writing a book and it's going to go out there into the wide, wide world, you do have these moments of imposter syndrome. And somehow you have to get over it. But having a counsellor is absolutely ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's very quickly recognize that we've got another new person that's joined us, and it's the lovely Omar. And if you don't know Omar, or if you're connected with him, he runs a fantastic thing on LinkedIn called Zoom Party, and he's a lovely chap. He's put Mr. Harvey, very formal. How are you? Well, I'm very good, and I hope you are good too, Omar. If you have just joined us today, this is the Franchise Show, and today we are discussing franchise mentorship and how that fits into our businesses and how we can use that for the greater good of our franchise networks. And I have the lovely Steve Ennis and Penny Hopkinson with me, and we are having a fantastic conversation about that. So I'm going to go back to your your framework, Steve. There was facilitator, there was counselor, coach, and network. Let's take a franchise business, because you've got great experiences of a franchise business, and let's take two separate groups of people here, because various different people need mentorship at different points. But let's take a franchisee, okay, at various points in that franchise journey. Where do you think mentorship sits with a franchisee? Where should that begin? Should it begin right at the start, as soon as they're in the network?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And what would be really helpful at that stage is there's sort of for most franchisees in the first 12 months, your feet don't touch the ground. So to be able to just step out of being in the business and have an hour where you might take a Zoom call with a mentor who's he's another part of the country completely, but you get an hour of just stepping out of what you're doing to work on your business in that hour would be utterly priceless at that formative stage of your business, because they'll be working 24/7, 7 days a week, nose to the grindstone, and massive value in calling a halt to that, stepping back, and just reflecting on what you've done, and then taking stock of it. And what could be really helpful from a mentor there is the mentor is much more likely to ask the really pertinent question that cuts to the chase of what the mentee needs and should and ought to be focusing on, rather than perhaps the mentee who's got into a style of working where he's just at it all day long, and perhaps some of that productivity that he might be bringing to his role is being lost out of the urgency to do. So the thinking time that is provided by an hour of mentoring could be absolutely priceless to a first-year franchisee. Thereafter, as the experience curve develops, you're more likely to get into the cut and thrust of coaching, where the mentee might have a style of working which is wishing to reframe, and the mentor might be able to support the reframing of something so that marginal gains can be achieved through perhaps improvements in the leadership and management of the mentee, because they'll probably have a degree of competence in the role that they're doing. But as the maturity of the business comes, the typical refrain from a franchise owner is challenges with personnel and the nuances of managing and getting the best of their teams. And that's where coaching can be, again, utterly priceless in unlocking the full potential of the franchisee, the mentee, to enable him to get or her to get the best value out of the people they employ.
Absolutely. I like that, because the relationship naturally evolves from a new franchisee to a more experienced franchisee, and Penny's that's the same for knowledge sharing and an ops manual. It's an evolving thing, it's a changing thing. It's not this static thing, it's something that needs to mature with the business, isn't it?
It's like a fine wine.
It makes me want to have a fine wine now.
It may not be drinkable to begin with, but by the time it matures, it is absolutely delicious, and everybody wants to be part of it.
I like that analogy, but you know what? With a fine wine, you've got to have the right ingredients and know what you're doing at the beginning and a solid foundation. I say that because I made some wine and it was disgusting. It was disgusting after a year. It was disgusting after 2 years. And I think it's been 4 years and it's just tasting more and more like vinegar. I'm hoping that one day it will mature and taste delicious, but I think it was due to the lack of knowledge at the outset. So I think that strong foundation, and I think I'm always going to think of my wine when I think of that now.
Yes, I mean, it's true that you have to have the ingredients, the foundation, to be able to build your operations manual or your knowledge sharing environment in the correct way. If you don't have that structure, then you can't put the appropriate flesh on the bones.
Yeah, and your wine will always taste of vinegar. Let's have a little look at a comment here from Simon. And Simon's put, can an outsider mentor a franchisee without falling foul of the system? Yeah. What do you think of this one, Steve? If you're coming into you've spoken a little bit about potentially franchisees helping other franchisees and that peer-to-peer support, but how do you think external mentors fit into a franchise business when you've got a model that's very set and you're trying to put across this model, and it has to be exactly the way it is.
They can bring massive value again. So again, in my experience when I was at Wiltshire Farm Foods, I worked as on the franchisor side of the business, and I was really pleased that a number of the franchisees recruited external mentors and business coaches to support them in the running of their business. Now, those external people didn't know the fine detail of the Wiltshire Farm operation, but they needed to get a broad framework understanding of it. But the thing that most often was the challenge facing the franchisee wasn't the system. It was a much broader set of challenges that they were trying to wrestle with. So you'll find that in most franchise or organizations, the system is proven to work. Yeah, that's why they franchise the business. Now, it's around execution that most people find that the biggest challenge rests. So an external mentor might be able to bring some really nice insight because they're not stuck in the politics of an organization. They can just see it at face value, and they can ask the innocent question that might not have been asked of the franchisee previously.
Yeah, I like that. It's a different perspective, isn't it? When you come into a business, I think when you're involved in a business, you can get too tied up in the day-to-days. Whereas if you come in and you're not tied up in that, you can have this really refreshed view about it.
Yeah, and very often they might ask a really obvious question that nobody else has asked.
Yes, absolutely.
Because they just come at it from a fresh perspective. They see it, they try and evaluate the situation, and they'll ask something that's a golden question that either the franchisee or even the franchisor and the regional support teams who might be helping the franchisee have all overlooked because they're too involved in the business. So a fresh set of eyes is something that can bring real value.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's absolutely right. I mean, Penny, in terms of the sort of knowledge sharing and ops manuals, do you? I mean, you're that fresh pair of eyes. You're that external perspective. But as you're doing these knowledge sharing platforms and these ops manuals and helping people in this way, do you yourself call upon people from outside the business to get extra perspectives, or is it you as an extra pair of eyes learning and understanding the business and applying that?
I think that there are two areas where this is three areas where this is vital. One is employment law, and I will always recommend that the manual does not cover in any shape or form the detail of employment law, because if the manual isn't updated in real time, then all sorts of things can go wrong and the franchisee can be in a very, very difficult position. So I would always recommend one of the key consultants for that, much as I've done with many other franchisors I've worked with. Another one is health and safety. You can do so much, but an external consultant is always very valuable. And then the murky world of data protection, that also is another area that an external consultant can help tremendously.
Absolutely. Sorry, go on. Sorry.
I was just going to tackle the situation sort of, yes, through working with so many franchisors, so many sectors, it's wonderful when I can go into a franchise and see something that they haven't seen before. And I think that's where you add real value. You may not know their business, but because you've had all that experience, and now for me it's getting on for, I dread to think it's nearly 40 years, you can pull ideas from one franchise and turn it to the advantage for somebody else, and that's the difference that makes the difference.
Absolutely. You've both mentioned the word value, actually, and I think it's a really important word, actually, bringing value to a discussion. Steve, you mentioned bringing value to a discussion when you were talking about encouraging people to solve their own problems through guidance and direction, because they then own that problem. And I think you're absolutely right on that. I love that. I want to move on now to talking about mentorship for a franchisor. Now, we've discussed a little bit how that might work for a franchisee, but how do you think and where do you start when you look at mentoring a franchisor in this case? And that can go to Steve.
It's broadly the same principle. And as a question was asked earlier, do you have to be in the business and know the system? Well, again, in my own experience, when I was working as a franchisor, the problems I wrestled with, a mentor could have helped massively by just bringing that external perspective. But there's something I haven't mentioned that is another ingredient that needs to be considered if a mentor-mentee relationship is to work, and that is the question of, first of all, the chemistry between the two protagonists has got to be one where there's a really strong sense of connection and critically a sense of trust between both parties. And again, I've found that my route towards achieving that objective is to make clear in the introductory stage, where somebody might be considering working with me as their mentor, is to really impress upon them that I want to appreciate and understand how I can serve them and how I can work with them on their terms, so that I want them to be wholly themselves. But given that they're the individual they are, I'm just going to try to mold my style so that I play to the best characteristics of the person I'm serving. So in terms of the ego state, I'm the servant in the relationship. And if I can serve the mentee, I'm much likely to garner their trust. And when I garner their trust, they're probably going to be more vulnerable and open with me and tell me the real matter that is going on in their situation. And if I can discern that, I might then be able to pose the questions that help them find their way forward.
Yeah, I love that. When you said serve the mentee, that's absolutely the attitude that as franchisors we need to have. We are serving our franchisees who are serving the people that are using those services. It's a big family of people that are doing that. But I think that that's a great attitude and way of looking at it. We are going to start to come to the end of our discussion today. We don't like to hold people up from their evenings too long, but I am going to put up a comment here from Natalia as well. So let's see what Natalia is saying. Natalia has put fascinating discussion, completely agree on all points. Sadly, I've got to leave as a meeting, but absolutely love this. Mentoring is super important and helpful. Well, it's great to have you with us, Natalia, whenever you can be here. So thanks so much for your support, as always. So we have now come to the part of the show that is relatively new and I am loving very much. And we are going to put up a particular QR code, and it's all about hats. And this is a point where I'm going to disappear for a little bit, but you will be able to hear me talking, okay? Because this is the point where we get under the hat of the guest. And I have a lovely new hat. And this hat was brought to you by PJ Murphy & Son, bespoke British hatters. And that's the lovely Paul that was with us earlier. So this is the part of the show where I'm going to ask each of you a little question about you. We're not talking about mentorship now or knowledge sharing, but let's start ladies first. Penny, tell us something that you would think our audience don't know about you. Have you met anyone famous? Any good claims to fame? Let's start there.
Yes, when I was a young journalist, I worked for a publication called Nursery World, and I was asked to go and interview Hayley Mills when she had her baby. And the baby was about, I think, 3 weeks old, and I went to this huge mansion in Knightsbridge. And I thought, now, what shall I do to break the ice? So I bought a little teddy bear. And she was absolutely lovely. And we had a wonderful, wonderful interview. And that was my first world exclusive.
Wow, fantastic. I love it. Excellent. Steve, you've been in business and in life a little bit of time. Have you got any good claims to fame or something that people don't know about you? I like to get under the hat of the guests now.
Well, I can call Penny Hopkinson a mate. I dinate on that one regularly. Yeah, something that's a bit unusual. I had a wonderful experience just last year. Business doctors operate in more than just the UK. They have a presence across several continents. And last year, they opened a franchise. They took the franchise model to the country of Iran, and we had a launch event where the master franchisor put on an event in Tehran. This is last March, to 1,200 privately run Iranian businesses. And on the day, 250 of the 1,200 signed up as wishing to have the coaching services of Business Doctors Iran. And it was an utterly fabulous experience. And anything that we may have heard in the UK media as to the circumstances of that nation were utterly blown out the water. But I knew this also because Penny had 20 years visiting Iran in her earlier career. And so when I was told of the opportunity to go as a representative of Business Doctors, I said yes, put the phone down, and then immediately called Penny and said, "What do you reckon?" She said, "You'll love it." And well, I loved it with cherries on top. And it was a fabulous experience. And the thing it really taught me was we do have to be careful of the opinions we form of places we may never have been based on what the media tell us to think about the place. And the beautiful thing about Iran is it's a wonderful nation just in terms of its natural beauty, but it's also one that's utterly blessed because the people are completely fabulous. And it was an experience I'll never forget. And in part, I have Penny to thank for that.
That's fantastic. I love that story because, you know, we get all sorts of different things from different parts of the world, different people, different perspectives, and you know, a great way to end. Love it. We've got some more comments coming in, but we always stick to around 50 minutes. So what I will say, if anyone's put up a comment towards the end of this, both Steve and Penny and me will have a little look at that, and we can certainly respond to that on LinkedIn as well. I think it was James or Jim that has put up a comment. So Jim, first of all, welcome to the show, and we will definitely get to that. Before I get on to what's happening later in the week and next week, Penny and Steve, I want to give you a little opportunity just to let people know the best ways to get in touch with you. So Steve, perhaps you could go first. What's the best way? Is it sort of an email or is it LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'll be honest. LinkedIn isn't my first place to come to. in my busy day. So if people would like to reach out and ask a question, I'll answer all of the questions that may be asked. So my email address is probably the best, which is steve.ennis@businessdoctors.co.uk. Maybe you could put that in the chat, Harvey. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you can do that as well. So if you go to the chat afterwards, pop that in there.
Yeah, I will do. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So people can get hold of you.
I'd welcome any questions, and I'd be happy to help.
Fantastic. And Penny, perhaps you can let people know again the best way to get hold of you as well.
Well, conversely, LinkedIn is my first port of call, and please do connect with me. I'd really love it if we connected. And I'm on LinkedIn first thing in the morning, and I look throughout the day and last thing before turning in.
Fantastic. Great. Well, we have now come to the end. Join us for our sister show this Thursday. And we will be talking, I think, I'm checking my diary, but I think we're talking to Paul Lewis from Pitman Training. And we got 2 Pauls in 2 weeks in a row. So, but join us on Thursdays, 5:15 for Franchising Brand Stories. That's where we get under the hat of some of the top brands in the UK and in the world. It's always a fantastic story, and we really get behind these brands and get to know these people. So please join us on Thursday, 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST. And next week on the Franchise Show, so next Tuesday, 5:15, we have got the lovely Nick Pleven coming on from eTalent, and he's bringing Rupert with him, and we are going to be talking a similar subject actually, but we're going to be talking about coaching, franchise coaching. So that's going to be a really interesting conversation. Looking forward to that one. Please join us for that as well. So until next time, my friends, take very good care. Have a fantastic week ahead, and cheerio.